We are underway in the first round of the NCAA tournament with a service error committed by the Chicago State Cougars. Victoria Zagumna committing the service error. She was the Northeast Conference Setter of the Year this season. Here's the aforementioned Elena Scott serving for Louisville for the first time. Chicago State in the darker uniforms, black with green numerals and trim, and then Louisville wearing the new threads this NCAA tournament, red and black with the gold accents that they just unveiled earlier this week. There's Charity Looper, first team All-ACC performer this year in her second in Cardinal red and black. Steph Cantway, this Louisville team, the unique position of knowing that they could win a national title without ever leaving home. The first two rounds of the NCAA tournament being hosted here at the KFC Yum Center. They would host if they were able to advance to the regional semifinal next weekend. And we know that the national semifinal and the national championship game will be here at the KFC Yum Center in 3 weeks' time as well. What a proposition for Louisville to bring home a title without leaving home.
And I think it was a little nerve-wracking all year. It was that talk about getting that 1 seed. They were the last 1 seed announced on Selection Sunday. And Dani Busboom-Kelly said in her press conference this week that it seemed like it was a sigh of relief when that was announced. And now that pressure is off their shoulders, and it's time to focus on each match.
But she added that she didn't want to be relieved anymore. She wanted to be excited and hungry. That's the kind of performance that she wants to see from her team. And Anna DeBeer adds to the early excitement and forces a Chicago State timeout with that kill. 5 points in. The Cougars call time. It goes without saying, but I'll say it. They need to get Legita going.
Yes, and she's a confident, spunky player. They need her to get rolling early.
The Chicago State team is one of the more fascinating stories in all of the NCAA tournament. They have just 9 players on their roster, and they only really play 7 of them. They refer to them as the Iron 7. It is a team that is close-knit. Dani Busboom-Kelly, the Louisville head coach, noting that because of that smaller roster, that this team is high on chemistry. They know one another, and they know how to play together. Under the leadership of their 5th-year head coach, Tony Trifonov. He is the Northeast Conference Coach of the Year in his 11th NCAA tournament. You saw there the first with Chicago State, but he's been to the Big Dance 10 times at a previous stop in his career with Florida A&M.
And you can see a little frustration from Coach right now as you're talking about this. And I think it's because his team is making errors. He did not get frustrated when Reese Robbins swung from the right side and they didn't dig it. But he wants his team to make sure they're playing their game.
Chicago State still working to try and get on the board. And they'll have the swing here from Carly Clare on their left side. Charity Looper with the touch for Louisville. Here's Clare once again. And Clare able to get the Cougars on the board. Carly Clare, the junior from St. Joseph, Michigan, transfer from Cleveland State where she spent 2 seasons.
And a successful lefty that hits a very heavy ball. We'll see if the Louisville block can slow her down.
8 double-doubles this year for Clare. There's Patricia Laguita, the player we highlighted just a moment ago, the leader for this team. Reese Robbins for the Cardinals keeps that one in play for the kill. And it is an 8-1 start. Louisville flying out of the gates. And Reese Robbins will take a seat, the sophomore from Texas. And there's a look at the ACC's Freshman of the Year, Nailise Cabello, the freshman setter, splitting time in the 6-2 with Ellie Glock. But Cabello, a terrific freshman campaign, 554 assists for her this year. Looking for one here for Charity Looper. And it is an attack error. Point to Chicago State.
Looper, along with the bench from Louisville, seemed to think that that ball was in, so they are challenging.
The previous point is under review.
An early challenge from Danny Busboom
The
Kelly.
original call was out, point Chicago State. Louisville is challenging that the ball was in.
That announcement from Bill Thornburg.
As this play is being reviewed, the referee is allowed to also call a touch if he sees it as the play is happening. However, I think it was a pretty clean ball, so the focus is going to be on where it landed on the floor and if it caught any of that white line.
Louisville clearly has set the tone early here in the first set. But Danny Busboom Kelly hoping to perhaps set the tone in the challenge game as well.
And I think
you can
there's
do
a
that.
fine line here from Louisville. You want to make sure you jumped out to an early lead, right? It was 5-0, now it's 8-2. I think you want to make sure you maintain your focus and your intensity, and I think that's part of what Danny Busboom Kelly is creating here, making sure that every point matters, and that later in the NCAA tournament, she can say that to her team. We even challenged when it was 2-8 because every point matters.
Yeah, that point that she made this week in her
After
press
review,
conference.
The ball was in, point Louisville.
Danny Busboom Kelly successful with that challenge. To reiterate the point that we were just making, she said that every contact matters when you're playing top-level competition. That was what she hopes her team learned from difficult outings against Pitt at home and then Stanford on the road to finish the regular season heading into this NCAA tournament.
And while it may not have the same importance and impact on the outcome in a match like this, I think you still want to create that mentality early in the tournament.
Here's Looper. This time there's no doubt about that one.
She is flying up above this block and able to cut the ball sharp cross.
Charity Looper, one of the best athletes in all of college volleyball. As you see Cabello, that accolade will be prominently placed on her playing resume, at least for the moment. You would imagine she may have a career with more accolades ahead of her, given the success she was able to show this year as a freshman in the ACC, coming into this Louisville team with a culture so well established, with players and figures in the locker room so well established. Cabello able to establish herself as a primary contributor to this team as a true freshman. Very impressive.
And jumping in as the middleman between the first contacts from Elena Scott and the last contacts from Anna DeBeer and Charity Looper is not an easy part to be the sandwich.
Laser focused are the Cardinals right now. Hannah Sherman and Sofia Maldonado Diaz up for that defensive touch. Anna DeBeer rising high for it. And the point goes to Louisville on the whistle.
And you see Coach Triffanoff off the bench right now, very frustrated with the sloppiness of the second contact there from his team. He wants them to ignore the scoreboard and play their best volleyball.
Triffanoff said this week that Chicago State earning their bid to the NCAA tournament shows that hard work pays off. They'll need some more of that hard work today because their work is certainly cut out for them against #1 seed Louisville. Cabello to DeBeer. Anna DeBeer, one of those hometown heroes that Danny Busboom Kelly mentioned. The fact that the national championship is here in their hometown adds a bit of pressure to not only the hometown heroes, DeBeer and Elena Scott, but really the entire Louisville team. She said they've been hearing it for 6 months about the opportunity that hosting the national title will present to this team, a program that has come so very close to hanging a national championship banner just a couple of seasons ago. Certainly this year, a golden opportunity for DBK's club.
And 6 months might not even do it justice. I think it was a year ago at this time when they got knocked out of the NCAA tournament last year, and DeBeer had to decide if she was coming back to take her COVID year.
which she elected to do.
For the very reason of the Final Four being hosted in her hometown.
Camden Schrand on here to serve for Louisville. 22 aces for her this season for the sophomore from Northern Kentucky.
Almeida with a great fast slide all the way out to the right pin to really challenge the Louisville block.
Berenice Almeida from Buenos Aires, Argentina, one of a number of international players on this short 9-player Chicago State roster. Almeida's second team all-conference this year. Those international players, as Kara Cressy gets a kill for Louisville, has been part of the recipe for Tony Trifonov, both at Chicago State and in his previous stop at Florida A&M. As you see Cressy there, one of the nation's leaders this season in blocking, particularly in blocks per set. And a marked improvement over last season's output for Cressy. Maldonado Diaz. Here's Laguida. And again, a block. Cabello points to the rafters in celebration.
This is the one rotation Cabello plays front row while Maldonado Diaz serves. So the blocks are extra special for her in the one rotation she's able to block.
First block of the night for Louisville, the team that is second best in the country in blocking. Well, Chicago State, they have garnered more media attention this week than I suspect they've garnered in their entire history. Division I since 1988, but they have never made the NCAA tournament before. And in fact, if you look at the entire Chicago State athletic department, this volleyball team is just the second Chicago State program to ever win their conference title and go to the NCAA tournament. The women's tennis team did it earlier this year. All of that is why the Chicago Sun-Times said this week that what Tony Trifonov has done is nothing short of a miracle. This is a program that was long dormant, and dormant may be a word that is polite to use in reference to what they did in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, but Tony Trifonov, bringing in that international talent, has been able to turn this program around, leading them to 19 wins, a 13-1 record in the Northeast Conference, and a conference title.
And 19 wins is a great season. They had a great crowd. They got to host the conference and we're having a lot of fun. I think what coach is saying in this huddle is we need to bring that type of energy here. Win or lose, we need to play what we have established now is Chicago State volleyball.
He knows a thing or two about winning. Led Florida A&M at one point to 112 consecutive conference victories. Had a brief detour at the community college level, but then took the Chicago State job, he said, in no small part because his daughter had the opportunity to play against better competition in the youth ranks in the Chicago area. But his success has followed him now to the Windy City. Berenice Almeida back behind the service line as Chicago State tries to build some momentum in this first set. Louisville really took whatever wind was in their sails out of them from the very beginning as Kara Cressy strikes once again.
And Sandez just couldn't quite close this block. Cressy's able to go quick off of 1 foot on the slide and find the hole.
Kara Cressy, a second-team All-ACC performer this year for a Louisville team that reeled in the awards at season's end from their conference. An errant swing there comes off the right arm of Laguida.
Laguida's getting a little bit frustrated. Kind of took a backwards approach on that ball. She's had 12 attempts, but only 1 kill so far.
Here she is again with the right hand. Reese Robbins. And it's a point to Chicago State.
We saw in our first match today that blocking can really change the tune. I think defense and blocking is what I would focus on as Chicago State and try to let the offense come.
Victoria Zagumny, the Polish sophomore, back behind the service line. And Reese Robbins continues to have a hot hand for Louisville. She's one of 3 Louisville players with 3 or more kills already. Here's Claire. And she's just able to find that back corner.
I think it was a touch on the block there. The lefty on the outside is a different look. She stays and hits outside for that one rotation, and it's just a little bit different look for the block of Sherman and Robbins, and they need to adjust.
Clock to Sherman. Hannah Sherman with the swing. But it's an attack error, and it's a point to Chicago State.
Sherman seemed to think that ball was in, but because it's on the opposite side of the benches as opposed to the one that Looper had earlier, she didn't have a lot of people behind her telling her if it was in or not.
So it is an 11-point Louisville lead. Back up to a dozen now. Charity Looper with another swing and another kill.
And Louisville rotating, running their 6-2 offense. Something you don't see necessarily out of a lot of top teams in this NCAA tournament, but Louisville has really stuck with it this season. At certain points, they've gone a 5-1 with Cabello or a 5-1 with Glock when the matchups needed that. And I think that flexibility and that depth is something that makes the Cardinals stronger.
It's allowed them to use more of their offensive talent when they go out in the transfer portal and bring in players like Maldonado Diaz in the offseason. Paired with the returners that they have that were super talented.
Yeah, and we talked to Danny Busboom-Kelly in the press conference this week about that depth, and she said the number one thing, of course it helps with lineups during the games, but the number one thing is it has made practice fantastic all season. So they are running first team versus first team in practice and really having battles day in and day out.
What's fascinating about that is Carly Claire, the player who just scored for Chicago State, echoed that comment, but in the opposite direction this week, because she said that because of the short roster that Chicago State has, they're unable to even get any rallies in practice. They don't even have enough numbers to go first team on first team, as you alluded just now for Louisville.
Yeah, that was in their clip with the broadcast with the local news, and I just thought that that was absolutely crazy, but in some ways, how special does it make game day?
You would certainly look forward to it more. And there is Claire, the player that made that comment this week to CBS Chicago. It is certainly a unique situation to have just 9 players on your roster. But it's something that Trifonov had done in the past. One of his great Florida A&M teams had just 12 players on its roster. He is not afraid to find his unit and play them consistently all the season through.
And that's also credit to the talent of these players. You talked about the international flair. A lot of international volleyball, they grow up, they are trained, they start at a young age playing all the way around and playing all the positions. Every hitter is also a passer, and these girls develop those skills, and they have the talent to play 6 rotations.
Louisville ahead by 14, and the fans at the Center rise to their feet, because one more point for the Cardinals would end the first set. Here's Anna DeBeer. That'll do it for set number 1. Louisville like the thoroughbred that they are, gliding out of the gate in this opening round NCAA tournament game. Louisville out to a great start against Chicago State as they begin their journey in the NCAA tournament. The question was for Louisville, would they claim that final #1 seed? And despite a couple of losses at the end of the year to great opposition in Pitt and Stanford, the answer to that question was yes. Danny Busboom-Kelly's team, by virtue of their #3 RPI position, put forth a strong resume to the NCAA selection committee and earned that #1 seed. And here's a look at that resume that earned the #1 seed, including the accolades for Elena Scott and Nialise Cabello, the Defensive Player of the Year and the Freshman of the Year in the ACC, respectively. Danny Busboom-Kelly has said, Steph, that the identity of this team is defense and also winning at home. That has been a signature under her leadership in the last few years. And the fact that they're going to be at home all the way through the national title if they should advance there, what an advantage that could be for the Cardinals.
Can we tie that all together and say defense wins championships?
At home. Defense wins championships at home. You and I just coined a new phrase. You're welcome, America. Cliches added to the book.
But I think the blocking of Louisville really stepping up about a third of the way through the season. Just as they got into conference play, their block really found its own. And I think that has helped their defense flourish and has really given them an identity and something to build off of through conference play.
The first point of the second set to Chicago State. Victoria Zagumna.
And great, she just read that she had two options. She could use the middle or she could tip. She waited to see if PK jumped on the block. When she didn't, Zagumna took advantage of it and scored.
Zagumna, the conference setter of the year. Huge leap for her in playing time year over year. If you look back to last season, she played just 19 sets, but has worked her way into that iron 7 for the Cougars. Elena Scott. And Carly Clare is denied by a Louisville block. Only one team in the country does that better than the Louisville Cardinals.
Hannah Sherman has been a big part of raising the level of the Louisville block as conference went on. Her discipline and ability to work laterally side to side to the pins has been a good spark for the Cardinal defense.
Just 2 blocks today. That is pedestrian by Louisville's lofty standard defensively. Service error committed by Chicago State will give a point to Louisville. Tony Trifonov with a shrug of the shoulders.
And I think it's because he wants Legita to step up, and it's the little things. I don't think he expects her to hit 500 against the Louisville block in defense, but little things like the missed serves, the things that you can control, that's what he wants to see his team do well tonight.
That won't draw a shrug of the shoulders. It might draw a smile of celebration from Trifonov as Claire let it fly with her left. Here's Maldonado Diaz for the Cardinals, and just a bit too much on that.
We might have another challenge here.
And it appears that we do, which draws an audible cheer from the Louisville fans.
One thing Danny Busboom-Kelly mentioned was that the best part for her about playing at home is knowing when to challenge or not, because she feels like the crowd usually votes.
The original call was ball out, point Chicago State. Louisville is challenging that the ball was in.
There are many ways that home court advantage can be expressed. That is certainly a home court advantage. The knowledgeable Louisville fan base and an emerging volleyball community here in the city of Louisville that makes a difference.
8,000 or 10,000 line judges to help you out.
That's right.
Only 2 paid ones, but then you got the rest.
Well, I was going to say, if you are the 2 paid ones, you probably don't think of it that way.
After review, the ball was in, point Louisville.
A very quick review and yet another correct challenge for Danny Busboom Kelly.
Which means she holds on to both of them, and both teams still have 2 challenges for the match.
Challenges. Is it an art or a science? What do you think?
A combination. I think they're used in different ways at different points during the match. I think that was truly a challenge to try to get the call right. A lot of times later in the match or later in the set, we see them used as makeshift timeouts, momentum changers, and I would call that maybe more of an art.
There's room for creativity is what you're saying.
Yeah.
But that was more...
This one was technical.
Yes.
I think this one was to get the play right, so we'll call that a science.
Maldonado Diaz was scientific with her placement of that shot.
And Calderon wants that one back because she hesitated just a little bit and probably could have gotten that dig in the middle of the court as the libero for Chicago State.
Here's Claire leading the way for Chicago State, the only player with multiple kills. She's got 5. Maldonado Diaz for Louisville. And that one ricochets out for a Louisville point. Calderon unable to get behind it and keep it in play. Andrea Calderon, first team All-Northeast Conference. She is in her 5th year at Chicago State for the Peruvian International.
And we're starting to see the size difference, the physicality difference between these 2 teams with Louisville and Chicago State. Chicago State struggling to get a clean kill at the net, while Louisville's playing a little bit higher, swinging above the block on their offense.
Service error will give Chicago State the point back. To your point, Chicago State does have size. Sandez listed at 6'4", Lakita listed at 6'3".
Both are in the back row at the moment.
But when Louisville has as much size as they do, it just makes it difficult to get clean swings off.
And it's size and athleticism, everything combined, just the speed of the game that you're used to. Those things make a difference down the stretch.
There's one of those 2 taller players, Lakita at 6'3" out of the back row, but Sofia Maldonado sent it back and it bounced in play for the Louisville point. Sofia Maldonado Diaz, the Arizona transfer for the Cardinals, had over 200 kills this year. That one looked like it went off the face of Camden Schrand, but Louisville able to keep the ball alive. Maldonado Diaz once again. And Chicago State, that pass back to Claire, gets the job done. Not sure that was the ball that Carly Claire envisioned attacking, but she's able to score with it.
But great job here by Zagumna. She has 3 options. She has her middle, her outside, and then normally Legita is her back row attacker, but she mixes it up a little bit, throws the ball behind her to Claire, and catches the Louisville defense off guard. Those are the kind of plays Chicago State needs to score on instead of trying to win the athleticism battles at the net.
Claire right now leading all players with 6 kills. And the officials deemed that that one was contacted by Chicago State for a Louisville point. And just at the back of your picture there, Tony Trifonov immediately picks up his green card with a challenge.
I believe there was a touch called on the play, but Trifonov is saying no touch.
The original call was touch, point Louisville. Chicago State is challenging no touch.
To answer your question from earlier, I believe this is a scientific challenge.
With the hypothesis that there was, in fact, no touch.
Well, we've been talking about the hitters hitting above the block. I think here, Anna DeBeer goes for the high swing, and I don't think Zagumna touches it with that outside hand, but we'll be looking at the right hand of Zagumna on the outside pin.
Very good look at it there. The officials did have a long look at each other to determine the call in the immediate moment after the ball hit the floor. So there certainly was some pause by the officials, leading you to believe that it wasn't quite a conclusive decision initially.
Yeah, it doesn't, to make the original call, it doesn't have to be unanimous between the two line judges and the two officials.
After review, there is no touch. Point Chicago State.
So it turns out the evidence of this scientific challenge supports the hypothesis of Tony Trifonov.
And we have 4 more chances to do it because both teams keep their challenges and still at 2.
We'll see if an artistic challenge comes up later at any point. After the delay, PK off the Louisville bench, adding her name to the list of scorers. PK Pegron Kong, 5th-year grad student out of South Dakota for the Cardinals. Played just 69 sets over the course of the season. I say just because earlier in her career she had been a much more prominent player for the Louisville Attack. Former member of the East Region team and the All-Pit Region team last year in the NCAA tournament. She's had success in this event over the course of her career. And perhaps Danny Busboom Kelly will hope that that experience will show itself for PK as Louisville tries to make a run to a national championship. Much more competitive opening to this second set than we had in the first, and it continues to be competitive. Chicago State is pulled to within 2 on that attack error from Anna DeBeer.
And you see, I think Chicago State has made a little bit of an adjustment keeping their hitters off the net, but that's also a different kind of ball than their hitters are used to hitting. So we'll see if that comes around as the match progresses.
Ball hung up in the air for DeBeer. And Louisville's block comes through with a point. PK.
Good inside hand from PK there on that ball that was going cross. She was able to reach into the hole and close it, or reach into the cross and close it.
3rd leading blocker for Louisville was PK this year with 75. Laguita. Pinpoint precision there for Patricia Laguita.
So I think this is the ball Chicago State's going for. You see Zagumna brings this ball off the net. Laguita's about 3 or 4 feet off the net when she contacts that ball. I think that is going to be key for them getting kills against the Louisville block.
Is it literally just a matter of giving her more room to operate?
Yeah, more room to work so that she's not right in, because she's not able to go over and sometimes around the Louisville block. So when you're further off the net, your angles are longer and it gives her more room to work.
Here she is on the right side, and again, Laguita with the kill.
Same thing on that ball. We saw her 3 or 4 feet off the net. Great adjustment by Chicago State to find a way to get Laguita going.
And a little nervous cheer comes from the Louisville faithful. Reese Robbins trying to soothe the nerves. It's Looper's swing, but it's a point to Chicago State. And Louisville getting in their own way here in the second set with a number of attack errors. And Legita coming off of strong performances. A combined 49 kills in those 2 outings. Starting to heat up a little bit here in set number 2. And Chicago State could tie it with a point, but not yet.
Chicago State libero Calderon has done a good job of picking up some of the scrappy balls and not hesitating. At the beginning of the game, a couple of the roll shots, she was looking for someone else. She's decided she is taking over the Chicago State defense.
Sherman with the block, but Calderon able to keep it alive, but not for long. In the end, it's a block that counts on the score sheet for Sofia Maldonado Diaz.
And this is a little bit of a tough ball for Legita, just coming from her left side instead of typically the ball comes from your right side. Didn't quite get her feet there, and the ball ended up pretty low.
Just the second solo block of the season for Maldonado Diaz, who had 56 total blocks. Claire goes into the scorer's table to keep that ball alive. And a real chance here for Chicago State if they get the pass right. Off of Calderon, yet another Louisville block.
But Calderon right in there covering her hitters, giving them confidence.
Timeout on the floor. It is likely the blocking game, year in and year out. Louisville is among the best blocking teams, not just in their conference, the ACC, but in the entire country. Certainly was true this year when they finished number 2 in all the land in blocks per set at just over 3. Kara Cressy, Hannah Sherman, PK, all significant contributors in that statistical category. As a matter of fact, only last year stands out as the outlier where Louisville was not among the national leaders in blocks. They have picked up where they expected to be in 2024 after that slack in 2023.
And it's something that they pride themselves in, and it's a benefit of running the 6-2 offense. They always have quote-unquote big hitters in the front row, which also are your blockers.
And Louisville's blocking is a big part of why they currently have this advantage over Chicago State. That was their 8th block of the night to give Cabello this opportunity to serve. A joust. It was Sandez, the player that went up for Chicago State. Block number 9. Louisville throwing a block party right now at the KFC Yum Center. About 8,000 Cardinal fans have been invited. Hannah Sherman, the redshirt sophomore from Silver Springs, Maryland. 73 blocks, including 15 solo blocks for her this year.
We also see Peyton Peterson in the game for Louisville.
Peterson, the true freshman from Iowa, who has grown into a larger and larger role for this Louisville team as the season has gone on. Clearly, Danny Busboom-Kelly and her staff see a bright future for this young outside hitter. Here she is with a swing. And she may get yet another opportunity. Not here, though. It's Maldonado Diaz who slams that ball down for the Louisville point. And after Chicago State had threatened to tie the set, Louisville has opened up a 6-point advantage and forced a timeout from Tony Trifonov on the Chicago State bench.
And I like what Danny Busboom-Kelly did there in bringing in Peyton Peterson. A little different energy for the Cards without having to lecture them about staying focused. Just bring someone different, make a change.
Well, we just talked about Peyton Peterson. She has a familial connection to the team that Louisville hopes to face in the next round. Her twin sister is a freshman for UNI, Jayden Peterson. And their mother, Bobby Peterson, is the Northern Iowa head coach. It's one of a number of sister acts that we have between the teams that we're seeing here in Louisville this weekend and other teams throughout the country. There's a lot of sisters playing in this NCAA tournament.
Yep, Naelis Cabello, setter for Louisville's sister Naomi, just actually lost to Florida, setting for NC State. And then Kara Cressy's sister played last night against South Carolina for Dayton, Abby Cressy. And then we just had Reagan Riley for Illinois, and her sister is Nebraska setter Bergen Riley.
It is certainly a family affair in college volleyball. And it's great to see sisters competing at the highest level. And should Louisville advance from this one, which nothing against Chicago State as the number one seed in this matchup, you would expect Louisville to advance out of this one.
We haven't had a 116 upset in a volleyball bracket in at least my time.
But it'll be an interesting matchup tomorrow, should it happen, for Peterson to go against her mother and her sister on the biggest of stages in college volleyball in the NCAA tournament.
I think the nerves and the storyline behind that are cool, but from a mom's standpoint too, how cool that you get to figure out how to coach and watch both of your kids playing in the NCAA tournament. You can't tell me that she thought that was ever going to be able to happen in the first round.
We heard before the action tonight that Bobby Peterson for Northern Iowa has made the trip down to Louisville multiple times this year to see the daughter that isn't playing for her, Peyton Peterson, in action with these Cardinals.
Well, and that's when, as a mom that coaches, you like the midweek games, you like the times where they don't line up, but you know in the NCAA tournament, it's either going to be Thursday, Friday, or Friday, Saturday. And so you know those schedules are not going to lay out correctly. They're always going to overlap. So how awesome that they're at the same site. I want to know if the NCAA knew that or not.
If it was part of the equation when they were sorting it out.
I want to know if it was on the whiteboard.
Here's Anna DeBeer. And Zahara Qureshi, the sophomore from West Hartford, Connecticut, had a swing there for Chicago State in that rally. And the point ultimately goes to the Cougars on yet another Louisville attack error. I say yet another. They're hitting nearly 400 Louisville, but that's the 6th attack error that the Cardinals have committed.
And that's where I was talking about the sub-in of Peyton Peterson, I think was a good change of energy, because I think Louisville has started to get just a little bit sloppy in this second set compared to the first set.
Another Chicago State point coming from Patricia Lagida. She has been prolific this season. 17 matches with 10 or more kills. 3 times she's had 20 or more kills, including 2 out of her last 3 matches, as we highlighted earlier. But as Lagida does for Chicago State, Anna DeBeer can do for Louisville.
And DeBeer is so quick off the floor and with a fast arm. She can create so many different angles.
Anna DeBeer, 4-time All-ACC. Multiple-time captain of this team as well, just to speak to the leadership that she provides.
And with her moving off the net a little bit offensively, Lagida taking swings from 4 and 5 feet off the net now, the Louisville block has to be a little bit more patient. There's just that millisecond that the ball has to travel that extra 5 feet that changes the timing for the block.
Just when Chicago State feels like they may have a chance, Louisville comes up with a well-timed point. This time it's a kill from Reese Robbins.
And Reese Robbins got hot last year during the tournament and really provided a spark that Louisville needed offensively. They weren't running a 6-2 at the time, but they would bring her in just for some kills. Let's see if she can have that tournament magic this year.
And that tournament success last year propelled her into an outstanding sophomore campaign, moving into a very predominant role on this Louisville team. Kind of filling that Iko Jones spot. Another Cougar point. Another Louisville attack error.
And good run there from Louisville. Good option to use Anna DeBeer out of the back row. Louisville just wants to see those situations looking really crisp and clean right now.
Danny Busboom-Kelly is not the most expressive coach on the bench, but she is giving a look right now that is of marked concern, as Chicago State is pulled to within 3 once again. And the noise level rises at the KFC Yum Center as the fans feel the way DBK feels right now. But a service error gives the point back to Louisville.
I do think the crowd needs to do a little bit more at providing some energy and making sure this feels like a tournament environment for both teams. The crowd has their responsibility of hosting the Final Four too, right?
Calling him out.
Great
DeBeer.
swing from Peterson.
Peterson, yes, indeed.
It looked like an Anna DeBeer swing on that sharp cross inside the block.
Maybe a vision of the future for Peyton Peterson. Louisville fans certainly hope so. And with this second set so close, a 5-point lead feels significant for Louisville, and Chicago State calls their second timeout. Here's a look at the quadrant that these two teams are operating in. Purdue sweeping Loyola Chicago, who pulled off the big upset yesterday of the 5th seed BYU, putting the Boilermakers into the regional semifinals next weekend. They potentially will be making a trip to Louisville if Louisville were to advance today and tomorrow. But a lot of volleyball yet to be played in order for that to happen. But that is a very dangerous Purdue team. A lot of talent, a lot of experience, and they've gone through the wars of the Big Ten this year.
And they have two explosive outside hitters in Chloe Chacoin and Ava Hudson. They have an experienced team, but a young, energetic, fiery team. They've kind of been a roller coaster at some points through the season, but they have a lot of firepower when they are going on all cylinders.
I'm going to put you on the spot, and I didn't prepare you for this. So if you need a moment to collect yourself and think about your answer, I will not begrudge you. Who's your dark horse to win the title this year? Obviously, there's a lot of conversation about Pitt being the #1 overall seed because of their dominance over the course of the year. But if you had to pick one team that's maybe a little bit off the radar, who might you think about? Purdue seems to come to mind to me for a team that is a little bit further down that seeding list, but may have a shot at it.
I think that, Wisconsin, and Creighton, those are the ones that I will put on there. I don't know that they're necessarily dark horses, but I don't think a lot of people have them picked to win. I think Wisconsin is on the up and up right now, and Creighton has really been firing all season. They just haven't played a lot of those top 10 matchups.
You did very well for me not preparing you for that whatsoever. You sounded very prepared.
I watch a lot of volleyball.
Louisville is prepared to take a 2-0 lead. If they can score here, they're on a 3-0 run to close out the second set. A very testing serve there from Elena Scott. Here is Peyton Peterson, and Peyton Peterson gives Louisville a 2-set lead. The true freshman, looking like a seasoned vet in her first NCAA tournament, and that may bring some joy to Mom, who's doing some scouting ahead of the second round match for Northern Iowa tomorrow. Louisville wins the second set after a great test from Chicago State by a margin of 7. Will they win it in a sweep? The third set yet to come. Well, it's not quite a drumming, but Louisville does have a 2-0 lead as the 1 seed in this matchup over Chicago State. The Cougars making their NCAA tournament debut. Jeff Milby, Steph Cantway, thanks so much for joining us and for this first round matchup. Steph, Louisville doing what we would expect them to do so far this evening against Chicago State.
They've done a good job. I think they can be a little bit cleaner. I would expect them to come out of this halftime break with a lot of energy and try to be really crisp in the third set.
Authoritative in the third set is what you're saying Louisville may look like. We've seen some authoritative performances throughout the NCAA tournament already, though we're just on day 2, and that included the upset. Ole Miss defeating Florida State out of the ACC and moving on to a very intriguing matchup with one of those teams. We were having that conversation about dark horses, so to speak. Creighton is a team as a 2 seed that could do some damage.
Yep, and I think this is an interesting part of the bracket over here. I think both Creighton and Texas had times during this season where they could have been considered for a number 1 seed. Obviously, Texas has Maddie Skinner. Last year, she just took over the national championship game. You don't want to play them early in the tournament. And then there's Creighton with Ava Martin and Nora Sis at the pins. I think they are one of the dark horses that you asked me about earlier. I think they have a potential to be in the Final Four and even in the national championship match.
Texas closing in, by the way, on winning that first set as they face USC in their second round matchup. Well, Steph, if you're Chicago State, back to our match here, if you're Chicago State, what do you do to get yourself a little bit more in this match? They were so close, it felt like, in the second set to maybe stealing one away from Louisville. Clearly they're the underdog here, but they've played well in moments. What do they need to do to get something on the scoreboard for themselves here?
And they got Legita going, which I think helped a lot, and they increased the energy from defense. They were scrappy. They did the things that they do, and I think that's the important part here, is come play your game. Maybe you win, maybe you don't, but give the energy, make the appearance that you expect from yourself, and then see if the points will come. Cleaning up the serving is another thing that I think is important for them.
You see Carly Clare, one of 4 Chicago State players that have multiple kills, including Patricia Legita, who is right behind Clare with 5 kills, along with 4 digs and a block for Legita. She is the star player for this team, coming in as the Northeast Conference Player of the Year and the Northeast Conference Tournament MVP as well. But the matchup between Legita and Louisville's defense has gone Louisville's way more often than not. Louisville has forced Legita and Chicago State to adjust to them, not the other way around.
Yep, and I think that's something that this Louisville defense does to a lot of teams. Once you start to work around their block, their defense with Elena Scott picks up a lot of the tips, a lot of the roll shots, and turns those into offense. So you have to find different ways to score, challenging the block, going off the block. We saw Chicago State run a different option out of the back row with Claire going behind the setter. I think it's those things that Chicago State needs to be a little more creative with in this third set.
A Chicago State victory in this third set would be an upset in and of itself. But they were very close to one in set number 2. It'll certainly be intriguing. But as you alluded, Steph, Louisville with a little fire, a little energy coming out of the intermission.
And not to look ahead too far, but I think that energy and that fire is what they need to continue to go in this tournament. And remember, it's a quick turnaround for these first and second round games. You have to be ready to go in 24 hours.
Whichever of these 2 teams advances from this opening round match, that Northern Iowa team will not beat themselves. So you've got to be on your game because you know Northern Iowa will be on theirs tomorrow, even with the short turnaround.
Exactly, and that Northern Iowa team is so consistent and so disciplined. We saw Illinois fight back, but UNI did not get rattled.
And they never flinched once. A few folks might have flinched when Charity Looper went up for that swing because she has the ability to hit the ball so powerfully. Not quite the rockets that we've seen from her over the last 2 years for Louisville there, but it gets the job done for Louisville's 3rd point of this third set. Reese Robbins. So much great action happening across the country, and the Longhorns were able to close out that opening set against USC. It almost seems remarkable considering the run of success that Texas is on, that they're almost not thought about in this NCAA tournament, considering their national championship pedigree. But as a third seed, it's almost like they're forgotten a little bit.
I would say anyone that's on their side of the bracket
Yeah.
has not forgotten about them and was not excited to see that on Selection Sunday.
That's a fair point. Zahara Qureshi back behind the service line for Chicago State. Played one season at the University of Hartford last year before transferring to the Windy City. Anna Sherman gets that point for Louisville. And so Nayelise Cabello, the ACC's Freshman of the Year, back behind the service line. And it's an ace for Cabello. Fifth ace of the night for the Cardinals.
You see the bottom just drop out from that serve by Cabello.
And the ball knuckling as it traveled through the air. Can she make it 2 for 2? Not quite. Makita. And the creative idea there from Zagumna falls out of play. And a timeout from Chicago State. They had a great start to set 2, but Louisville in control here in set 3. Well, this 2024 NCAA tournament is the first since the massive changes that came to college athletics over the last year plus. With more conference realignment, it's a new look to several of the big power leagues across the country. And that's played out a little bit here in terms of the number of teams that made it to the NCAA tournament. Suddenly the ACC is up there with the likes of the Big Ten and the SEC with 9 teams in the Big Dance.
Yep, and there was some controversy around Selection Sunday of how a lot of the top ACC schools ended up on one side of the bracket and a lot of the top Big Ten schools ended up on the other side of the bracket. But once you looked at the numbers and realized that there was 9 from each conference and then add the SEC in there, 27 out of the 64 schools are from those 3 conferences. So it's hard to keep them all apart. But I do want to know what was on the selection committee's whiteboard for that logic as well.
You've alluded to that twice.
Yeah, I need into that room.
Well, if we keep doing our job, maybe you'll earn your way into that room. Somebody will notice you.
Just a peek.
Yeah.
We're going to have a challenge here for a touch. This is a back row attack from Claire, going straight up the middle. It landed pretty close to the end line, but was called out and no touch. I got to let Bill Thornburg do his job, though.
The original call was out, point Louisville. Chicago State is challenging that there was a touch.
You're letting Bill Thornburg do his job. You're coming for my job. You set that up beautifully. I mean, a perfect segue to Thornburg's explanation.
What I liked about this play, though, again, was that they used Claire out of the back row on something a little bit more unexpected, a different look. We see that creativity that we've been looking for from the Chicago State offense.
Well, while we await the adjudication on that review, as we look at a good look there.
Can I talk about what I'm really excited for when the Final Four is here? And that's that we will have the replay cams that are like HD and high def, the whole replay system, and it makes it so fun.
Is that something you foresee coming on a larger scale around the country in the years to come as this sport continues to grow and the investment will continue to come volleyball's way from athletic departments across the country?
100%, and I think it's something that adds to the viewership. It adds to the pleasure for the viewer when you can see those replays. You know what a replay looks like when you're watching NFL football or you're watching this. I think it's huge to have that high quality video and also just to make sure we're getting calls correct.
After review, the call is confirmed, no touch, point Louisville.
Well, we were having the conversation earlier about scientific versus artful challenges. I think the point you're making about the enhanced technology that will accompany the national semifinal when it comes here to the KFC Yum Center, that will take all the art out of the review process when it comes to officials.
You can still call the challenges as an art down the stretch when you need the timeout, but a lot of times they go a lot faster, so you got to be crisp with them.
I'm sure I'm confusing some folks at home with the comparison that I'm trying to make here, but I digress. Attack error from Chicago State gives Louisville a 9-1 cushion to start this third set as the Cards look for the sweep. Claire with the swing, and Maldonado Diaz and Hannah Sherman immediately looked to the officials, looking for the violation against Chicago State, which they were awarded. And Louisville on a 6-0 run.
Look for Chicago State to go out to Legita here at the pin and keep her off the net.
Sherman with that block touch that drew some oohs and ahs from the crowd. Legita again and again and again, and this time for the kill.
The Cougars are doing a good job moving the ball around, but Legita's going to have to be the one that steps up and gets some big kills here if they want to stay in the third set.
Maldonado Diaz had to hang in the air forever, but it's able to find the floor of that ball. And Maldonado Diaz with a wry smile after that point hit the scoreboard, because that was not the swing she envisioned when she jumped off the floor.
And that's a stack play there where Maldonado Diaz is coming over the top of Sherman. And I think the ball was set just a little bit too close to Sherman. And Maldonado Diaz was worried about landing on her and getting hurt and didn't want to risk that in the moment.
Attack error from Chicago State. And Louisville has a 10-point margin. Well, if Louisville goes on to win this in a sweep, that will do nothing to dampen the spirits. At least it shouldn't do anything to dampen the spirits of Chicago State, because what they've been able to do coming into the NCAA tournament is quite remarkable. This is a program that joined the Division I level in the NCAA back in 1988. They've had 3 winning seasons all time, all of them coming under Tony Trifonov. And they have an all-time record in NCAA Division I volleyball of, get this, 49-293. They were longtime members of the WAC. They went independent the last couple of years, joined the Northeast Conference this season, their first in the league. And they were able to punch their ticket to the NCAA tournament. And oh, by the way, I didn't mention this in that soliloquy about Chicago State. 11 times since 1988, they went winless. 11 times they had 0 wins. So for Trifonov to come in, produce 3 winning seasons, and earn not only their first 3 berths in postseason volleyball in their program's history, but their first NCAA tournament berth, is truly remarkable, regardless of what happens at the end of this first round match.
And I think they're going to be very proud of their season when they get to look back on it in a few days. I think tonight this is going to sting just a little bit, because I don't think this is the showing that they wanted, their first time showcasing their program on the national stage. So I do think Coach Trifonov is still taking this very seriously, trying to prep up his team right here. We just showed him talking stats in the huddle, talking probably about setter distribution there, considering that he was discussing with Zagumna. I think it stings to lose no matter what. I don't know that they expected to come in here and upset the #1 seed, but I think they wish they had a little bit better showcase tonight.
But as Carly Clare said this week, Louisville is another level from what they saw all year long in the Northeast Conference.
And I don't think after 48 hours maybe, that it'll take anything away from the amazing season that they had and their conference championship.
It was one literally for the history books for not only this volleyball program, but the entire Chicago State Athletic Department, a department that was traditionally an NAIA outfit through the 1980s. Notable athletes in track and field and basketball during their NAIA days. They had a national champion swimmer back in the 1970s. But this, the crowning achievement in many ways of this athletic department. As Alana Bankston checks into the match for the Louisville Cardinals. The sophomore from Omaha, Nebraska, who played just 13 sets over the course of the season. Didn't earn the spot that she would have hoped to after some bright moments last year as a freshman. But some good experience for her here in the NCAA tournament this evening.
You see Sherman there really driving hard for the one ball. Sandez reached into the cross but wasn't able to seal over the net.
Here's Bankston. And Bankston into the scorer's table.
It's exactly what you want to see.
Talk about earning yourself playing time in the future. Maybe not in this NCAA tournament run, but come next year, that play may play a factor in Danny Busboom-Kelly's mind, though the point did go to Chicago State.
100%. That's exactly what you want to see. We talked about Peyton Peterson being subbed in at that end of that second set to add some energy, just kind of add a new focus. All of these teammates want to see their teammates succeed, so it gives them a little focus, a little spunk.
Maldonado Diaz makes it a 2-touchdown lead for Louisville here in the third set.
Quality math.
Louisville a balanced attack today. 4 players with 7 or more kills, led by Maldonado Diaz with 8 on 14 swings.
Great touch.
Here's Bankston. Just past that far corner for an attack error.
Attack error. Elena Scott returns to the floor. Patricia Wagner serving for the Cougars.
But for Louisville, Steph, as they look to close this out in a sweep. Danny Busboom-Kelly pointed out this week that close to the season, having Pitt at home and then having to make the long road trip to Stanford for the season finale to face off with a couple of top-level teams as Bankston smashes it.
Great swing here from the right from Maldonado Diaz, led to a powerful dig, and Bankston's able to get up on the overpass.
Second kill for Bankston since coming on here in the third set. But Danny Busboom-Kelly said that close to the season was the most difficult finish to the year of any team in the country. And she also noted that all of Louisville's losses this year have come to top 5 level teams. So this Louisville team may be looking for a little confidence after those 2 losses. And Danny Busboom-Kelly using that opportunity during the press conference this week to remind them that when they've lost, it has been to top quality opposition. And they're certain to face more top quality opposition if they advance further in this tournament.
Yep, and that's an interesting thing about the ACC and their scheduling. The Big Ten just runs a classic schedule. They have it scheduled out through the whole year. The SEC is going to a conference tournament next year. That will be interesting considering 9 of the teams made the NCAA tournament this year. The ACC kind of does it by tier of where you finished last year. So when you finish in that top group, you play that top group at the end of next season going into postseason as opposed to having a conference tournament. There are some goods and some bads about that, as Danny Busboom-Kelly referenced.
Carly Clare with a point for the Cougars.
Good scrappy play for Chicago State there.
Clare, one of the bright spots for the Cougars today, leading the way with 7 kills, albeit on 29 swings. Has 6 digs and a pair of blocks as well to round out a terrific NCAA tournament performance. Alana Bankston wants that one back. Certainly wasn't an opportunity where she would have felt like she could have scored, but didn't want to hit that into the bottom of the net.
You can hear the crowd giving them a little bit of energy to finish this set.
Bankston a chance to atone. The swing there from Qureshi for Chicago State, and that's Reese Robbins with the kill.
And what Elena Scott does for this team is something we haven't been able to talk about much tonight, but you see her, the Cards have started to sub a little bit, do some different things, and she is just the consistent driving force, digging balls, keeping them in system, taking care of second contact, still in the running for AVCA Player of the Year.
Chicago State hoping that they are still in the running for this third set. Scott with 10 digs and 5 assists as well, as she went to the Louisville bench and now comes back on immediately. As you get a look at her outstanding NCAA tournament career, been a member of these last 4 Louisville teams that have included back-to-back runs to the national semifinals or better. Chance for the Cards. And it falls to PK.
But being able to run your middles on a 1 ball in transition that wasn't from the result of a free ball is something that Elena Scott's defense gives this Louisville offense. Her ability to dig in system right at the net so that a back row setter can get there and still be able to have multiple weapons on offense is unmatched.
Point to Chicago State. Might give me enough time to ask this question to you, as it looks like Louisville is going to wrap this up in a few points' time. If it is Louisville and Northern Iowa tomorrow, that's a rematch from that Cardinal Classic. They met back on September 14th. That was a sweep for Louisville over Northern Iowa. How do you see those two teams matching up here in the NCAA tournament for a second time this season, we should point out?
I do think it's always hard to play a team multiple times. I think UNI is not going to flinch at all. I think Louisville, with the #1 seed, has the advantage going into the match, but I think they have to play a crisp, clean, high-level match, and I think UNI will come to fight.
Two hugely accomplished coaches. Danny Busboom-Kelly, at one point in her career, won 3 consecutive ACC Coach of the Year awards from 2020 to 2022. Well, Bobby Peterson is enjoying a similar run of success. She's won currently 3 straight Missouri Valley Conference Coach of the Year awards. 2 terrific leaders of their respective programs, both taking this one in, and will duel in a chess match tomorrow. As you get a look at that block from Reese Robbins, Louisville's 10th of the night.
And that block may be the foreshadowing of what is the difference tomorrow. I think Louisville's block and their defense is what will propel them forward in this tournament. Great set from Elena Scott.
As Louisville fans know by now, a setter in high school, converting to libero when she came to Louisville, and is such an asset for that reason, because of her ability to find teammates. Louisville 3 points away. Very challenging service from Cabello, and an equally challenging swing from Charity Looper off the block to score for the Cardinals. Maldonado Diaz, a block for Chicago State.
And Chicago State has not slowed down. You saw a big swing from Claire there, and their block is disciplined, and Almeida is able to press into the hole.
Berenice Almeida, who had 63 blocks over the course of the season, second on this team, behind Sandez, who had a cool 100 over the course of the year. Maldonado Diaz, with Louisville still 2 points away from the sweep. And again.
Another dig from Claire.
This time it's Hannah Sherman. Got underneath that ball. And it's an attack error from Louisville. We've seen 36 combined attack errors over the course of the night, 16 of them committed by the Cardinals. And Almeida will serve. Looper scores. A match point on hand for the #1 seed Louisville Cardinals. They're out of the gate in their hopeful NCAA tournament run. Can they complete the sweep? They can. Hannah Sherman all over that ball, and the bench storms the floor as the Cardinals, flapping their wings out of the first round and into the second round of the 2024 NCAA volleyball tournament. Danny Busboom Kelly, some moments in this match that were maybe a little anxiety-ridden for her, but overall has to be pleased that her team got the job done.
Yep, I think at this point you say, great job, a win's a win, and you start mentally moving on to tomorrow with a quality opponent in UNI.
Survive in advance doesn't apply any better at any other time than when you're in the NCAA tournament. So it is the 1 seed against the 8 seed tomorrow evening. That is a 6 o'clock first serve here at the KFC Yum Center.